Hi, everyone. My name is Danny Baranowski, and I have to say, if you are either building or scaling in the beverage category, you're either incredibly brave or incredibly optimistic. And I'm excited to really talk about what it takes. I didn't say that. But I'm excited to talk about what it takes. And there's a massive difference between building and scaling, but I wanted to provide as many answers as possible and make this informative and less of a scripted sort of a panel discussion and more of a speak to the audience and kind of get your feedback. So before I do that, I'll introduce myself and then briefly touch on my esteemed panelists here. But I cut my teeth in the regulated space in the cannabis industry. I started my career doing sales and working for different brands, selling millions of dollars in the very early stages of the THC industry. I quickly found some friends in the advocacy space, and I realized that there's an incredible amount of power that we as brands and salespeople can have in shaping commerce in a regulated space that's going to both bring access to the plant and also provide economic opportunity. So one hand can feed the other, and it's up to us that are building in the space to make sure that we're the ones shaping the policy. Our legislators don't know what they don't know, and so many of them are not consumers, and there's just an incredible amount of runway for us to educate them. So that's myself. And Ryan, I'd love for you to do a quick introduction on yourself and your relation to building in the regulated space.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan Malkin, and I have a law practice based here in Florida. Focus on beverages, a lot of alcohol beverage work. I was previously in-house counsel at Pernod Ricard in New York, and then for the past 11 years had a practice here in Florida. We work with a lot of alcohol beverage companies as well as a lot of non-alcoholic beverage companies, both THC and non, and we're counsel for like the American Craft Spirits Association, New York and Florida guilds, as well as the Adult Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association. So do a lot with regulated industries, and happy to be here.
Hey everyone, my name is Daze Smith. I'm a CPA, tax specialist, fractional CFO. I'm also part of the adult CFO community. I've been running my own firm for the past 4 years, and now in the hemp and cannabis space.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zach Coburn. I'm a lawyer. I'm a corporate and regulatory lawyer. I've been working in regulated industries for over a decade. I cut my teeth in the cannabis industry, kind of like Ryan, but on the other side, I've been general counsel to 2 public cannabis companies, helping take the first one public and the second one making them a behemoth. But I work with a number on the THC side as well as on the beverage side, a number of regulated industries throughout Florida, actually throughout the country. So happy to be here.
For sharing. I'm Mary Bernuth. I'm the co-founder, the president and CEO of Pharos Brands International. We are a low-dose THC beverage, specifically marketed to seniors. I'm 70 years old. My partner is 71. I'm a mental health professional, and I created this brand specifically to offer seniors an alternative to alcohol, help them relax, but more importantly, create trust and safety for seniors. It's scary to consider cannabis as you age. I remember when it was legal in Colorado, or when it still is, when the dispensary market opened, and it was really powerful, a lot more powerful than when I was 16. So I'm very much an advocate for beverages. It allows a titrated, controlled experience, and I'm really proud and happy to be part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. As you can see, we have a wide range of people that are doing their best to build and scale. So you've got the expertise range here is incredible. We've got an operator who has built their brand focused on a niche customer, but has also expanded to over 127 grocery stores just in Florida, right? So she knows what it takes to get from finding the consumer to then going into a mainstream retailer. You've got the people that are going to take your company from the legal side side, we've got someone with deep expertise in alcohol and also THC. And then the part that we all need is money. I want to, instead of just letting us, talk to each other, I wanted to first get a pulse on the audience by raise of hands. So this panel is building or scaling. So if you are on the building side of building your brand, if you could raise your hand. Fantastic. Great. And who's on the scaling side? So you have an established brand, you're ready to blow it up. Okay, great. Perfect. And Jody, fabulous. So looks like we've got a lot of builders in this space, and I wanted to, again, ask a question to you all. What is the biggest hurdle that any of you are experiencing, whether it be on the operations side or building the fundamentals or finance? Does anyone have a question or is willing to share your biggest hurdle, and we can talk about some potential solutions from the audience? Education.
Great.
Tell me more.
Legislators, consumers, everyone, because it's unlike consuming cannabis through flower or edibles.
Sorry, they would like to, could you repeat your question or restart from the beginning? Thank
He
you.
said education was the biggest obstacle he's got.
Yep.
Educating consumers, educating legislators, educating
Investors,
everybody.
everyone. That's it. I mean, what the heck it is? How does it relate to things that, as an intoxicant or an adult beverage, how's it going to affect me? Right. That's the biggest challenge that we overcome, whether it's on a shelf, on the store, talking to legislators, attorneys, you name it.
Okay, well, let's start. Who wants to take it on first? Because that's a very deep, you had so many layers to that question, and you just referenced that. So let's start with consumers. Yeah.
Yeah, particularly for the senior population, we've designed an education program that actually is delivered in 55-plus communities to go into the community through their activity director, present to seniors living in that community in person. This is not about sending out a deck and a presentation to seniors from afar. This is right in person, talking to them. Theros is sponsoring this effort, providing beverages for seniors to try, both infused and non-infused. One of the things that I just came from DC, educating legislators on the category, helping move forward well, I don't want to go, that could be a very...
There's a rabbit hole.
Yes, there's a rabbit hole right there. I'm going to avoid that rabbit hole. But we are working with both senators and representatives to get rid of the ban that's happening in November. The feedback that I've received is very positive, that they also want to do the same. It's massive government overreach to get rid of that ban, but we can go, I'm sorry, it's a rabbit hole. I keep going down it. It's very hard.
It's very relevant.
Yeah, just pull the mic. But I'll just say that what's surprising when I was on the Hill, and this is my second fly-in, is how little people really know about this category. We're all living in this environment where you think, wow, everybody must know about it, and they really don't. And with seniors, the feedback that I get is this pot in a glass, like it completely grosses them out. They can't imagine what it's going to, and some of the brands taste like pot in a glass. No, sorry, that wasn't okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's talk about, Zach, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, there's an interesting dynamic because we'll stick with the THC beverage, right? The THC beverage market, it's kind of a disruptor, right? The reality is it's not an alcohol, but it's not really the stoner bro community. It's not the vape store community, right? So it is that odd mix. There's an interesting corollary, and Mary actually has a very unique perspective from it of, I'm going out into the community and I'm building education from the consumer up, right? And letting the consumer base ultimately educate the regulator and the investor base. The interesting analogy to that is actually look at Red Bull. Same concept. There really was not a market for energy drinks before Red Bull came along. Red Bull didn't go out and educate their investors. They didn't turn around and educate the FDA on whether or not they should be banned or not because there's too much caffeine or too much whatever's in it. What they did was they created a grassroots education campaign for people that enjoyed their product. And that swell built upwards. Now, whether or not that could work here, the U.S., I tell people all the time on the THC side, the United States, unlike other countries, skipped R&D and went straight to commercialization. We are a commercialized industry and a commercialized country. So, I think to get over the obstacle, if you have the resources to build a grassroots consumer education up that works, because it's really hard if you're a regulator to turn around and say, wait a minute, there's 10 million consumers that want this product. We can't just shut it down immediately.
And Ryan, sorry to say, Ryan, I wanted to ask you if you're counsel to one of these folks here that's building a brand and they're coupled with the challenge of education, like what are you advising your clients on? What levels of education, what claims can they make, and how can they do that effectively as building brands?
So, well, a couple of things. One, just to build off what he was saying, is the alcohol industry's done this fairly well in the past. Like the Distilled Spirits Council, for instance, is really self-regulating because in the THC industry, it's maybe not quite as good, right? So in alcohol, we try to self-regulate so we don't make these crazy claims like you can't use sex to sell, you can't appeal to kids who are underage, no over excessive consumption, etc., so that the regulators don't come after us. So it's really that versus anything else. So when you see things in reports where it's like, well, this cannabis product looks exactly like some other drink or Hawaiian punch or whatever it is, that takes away from what everybody's trying to do and build it up to make it more reputable, right? So there's that part of it, which is an industry-wide thing, and obviously you're helping with that in Florida and elsewhere. But on the other side of it, yes, we always look at claims people are making. Are you making health claims, which you don't want to do? Obviously, you have to make sure the label's compliant. Look at each state, and then the other part of it is, as you build a brand or start a brand or build a brand and scale it, the distribution issues and co-pack issues are the things that come up time and time again. So, am I getting ahead?
Yeah, let's take a break
sorry.
here. I think, THC, back to your whole point, is we do have to do quite a bit of education, but we can't make health claims, but it is changing people's lives. And we don't have clear regulations, and we're facing prohibitionist style attitudes. And so when it comes to, how we started this, if you're in the beverage space, are you crazy, optimistic? And how do you strike the balance of creating a successful brand and have to face all of those things? And I think you touched on it in the last panel was, you have to raise a bunch of money to solve all of those problems. So on the finance side of things, if you're building a brand, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone today starting a brand?
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as the whole capital raising conversation goes, most people think that, if you have a fantastic product, people are just going to automatically give you a lot of money, and we know that that isn't necessarily the case. Having a product that tastes good and, is safe and legal is important, but there's also a financial aspect about that, making sure that, your back office solutions are in order, having world-class tax and accounting, audit-ready financials, making sure your books are clean. These are the sort of things that people should be also prioritizing outside of just, hey, try my drink, it tastes good. I mean, I love Pharos and Last Rep and all, those brands, they taste fantastic. I've been trying them all day and been in the clouds because of it. But, there is another aspect of that. So, just keep that in the forefront of your mind as well. There's a twofold. You want somebody, out there on the streets, putting in the work, making sure the product is where it needs to be. But your finances are equally as important for capital raising.
I think there's also, to piggyback off of that, I deal with startups all the time, whether it's in alcohol, whether it's in cannabis, or just general startups. And emerging growth companies by nature operate in the world of, I have to do all this over here. I got to raise capital. I have to build my brand. I have to build my exposure. And they lose sight of the not sexy nuts and bolts stuff. The not sexy nuts and bolts stuff, that's what keeps me in business. That's the stuff I look for. I love that stuff. Why? Because without it, you don't have anything. The reality is, if you're like the last panel was talking about friends and family raises. Friends and family raises are wonderful. They're an absolute great way to start raising capital, except when you have to go through a corporate divorce. I have enough clients that are doing that because of the original cannabis, the green rush in 2017 and 2016, that are now blowing up. If you don't have your infrastructure, your governance, and your documents tightened up, like no one likes paying for me, but you're going to pay a lot more for me 10 years later when you don't have good documents in place. So identifying what your actual infrastructure should look like, what your governance should look like, what your company should, how it should operate, right? And sticking to it, because like Mary's a perfect example, and I don't know if this is true, but you know what? You got some investor that comes along and says, I'm going to give you $50 million, but I want
Not yet.
John Doe brand, but I want 4 of the 5 board seats, and I want 55% of the company. Well, that's a big decision you got to make at that point, right? So I think not losing sight of the back end, not sexy nuts and bolts, is hugely important.
Right.
One quick thing that I find that a lot of startups don't do is just keep a data room going from the beginning, because when they're ready and you're like, hey, we want $50 million, then they're like trying to ask me, well, do you have the operating agreement still that we signed? Do we have this? Do we have that? Like, just start a data room from the beginning. It'll make it so much easier than trying to pull it all together
What
later.
Ryan said. That was exactly what I was going to say, is the data room. I remember when we hired a team to help us scale, we raised $750,000, which is not a lot in this industry, as I'm finding out, but we did that with friends and family. The first thing they said is, how's your data room? And I said, what's a data room? I mean, honestly, I'm a psychotherapist. I created the brand because I wanted to help seniors with an option other than alcohol. I did not know what a data room was. I didn't know a whole bunch of stuff. We met at a conference, and it's Zadeh, right? Is it? Does okay. It sent me a fabulous overview of what he could do for me, and I said, I can't afford you yet. You know, so part of what you're dealing with when you're building the brand is, where are you going to spend your money? What we found out is that we had to put it towards legal. We had to set up all of the appropriate legal structure, have everything in our data room, have all of our financials put together so that investors could see exactly what we're asking them to do. All the sales projections, everything had to be in there. And we call it a VDR, virtual data room, and it has really made all the difference. The other thing that made a difference, another person asked about earned media. We hired a PR firm. Where do you put your money initially? We hired the PR firm to establish our brand out in the world, and we got into Forbes, we got into several, I did podcasts, and it really helped our investors feel more confident that we were moving in this direction, that we were a successful company that they could count on. Now, granted, they were my brother, my best friend, these is a friends and family raise that doesn't have to be registered with the FCC, but it is essential to get all of that backroom stuff in place. It's really easy to just focus on the fun stuff, the marketing, the visuals, the taste, the quality of the product. But if you don't have all of this legal in place, then your investors won't feel confident to put money in with you. We fortunately self-funded, but we're old and we had some money, but now we don't. And we put it all in this.
Not all.
And well, 70, not bad, but so it's it's an essential piece that isn't, as Danny said, sexy. So I'm off my soapbox.
Thank you, Mary. No, it's a lot of valuable insight. And for the rest of you builders in here, I'd love to ask another question, and maybe this would help guide you, but as you're building, what's the biggest obstacle any of you are facing? Is it retail adoption? Is it the distribution friction or finding the right relationship? Is it the labeling, the marketing, the education? or is it state by state compliance? Did anyone want to talk about for them as a builder, any friction points, any questions? Okay, do you want to? Sure. And did you?
You said distribution friction is the touch point for the builders.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe our legal can start with it. So when a brand is looking to find the right distributor, are you writing the contracts, and what is a good contract, and how can they vet with their lawyer? Maybe that's a great
So
place to start.
I spend a lot of time doing distribution agreements, so I could spend, an entire hour or more talking about this. But basically, generally speaking, I would say that distributors don't really do much, and that you should see them mostly as a truck and not much else is kind of like the baseline. Maybe as you grow, you can get them to actually do something, or if you have some sort of incentives or other things in place, that maybe you can get them, there's certain advocates that you could find within distributors. But in terms of the contract, that's usually the most challenging, because as you are a small brand, you're usually very excited to get into a distributor and you sign on. I mean, a lot of my time is spent because somebody signed a contract that they were so excited to get, and then they didn't realize that they can never get out of it. So most of the efforts that I make with contracts is figuring out how you can get out without paying a huge multiple. Largely that is, in these days, is goals and putting in some sort of other KPIs, so that if they don't do whatever it is that you want them to do, mutually agreed upon, then you can get out without paying the multiple. Because a lot of you guys are going to be with distributors that are either beer distributors, so they're locking you into basically alcohol beverage franchise laws, not necessarily by statute or regulation, but by the contract. So most of it is figuring out how you can get out before you get in, like basically a prenup. And then as you grow, you can typically figure out, now we have maybe more leverage, and we can look at maybe other things that can move the needle a little bit, like money from the distributor per case and all those other things. So anyway, I would spend a lot of time thinking about your distributor, and then also definitely engaging counsel who knows distributor agreements in the space.
I would also be mindful of, you don't have much room to negotiate. Distributors are taking the position, and not necessarily most distributors have their own fixed documents, and they'll say, this is what we're doing. And then your lawyer will come in and go, well, no, this is not what we're doing. And a lot of distributors will say, well, listen, you're one of 1,000 THC brands I'm talking to. You're going to take my form, or that's it. It's worth pushing back. There are plenty of distributors, but if you don't have legs and money behind you, it's not a lot of negotiating you can get through. The other thing I've seen is, look, there are, and Ryan knows as well, like, there are a lot of strict rules that distributors that operate in the 3-tier system have. Distributors operating in the non-alc space are deviating from the norms. So for example, distributors can't have a rev share. They can't have an ownership stake in brands. I see it tons of time now where distributors, but in the non-alcohol space, they want a revenue share. That's completely different than alcohol. So distributors are absolutely, and look, I get it. I've worked with distributors tons. They're pushing the limits on what they can do. That's a good business move. Especially when you get into markets that are regionalized or not as robust, right? So you got to be mindful. Don't, like, to his point, don't just sign the first document you get.
And one follow-up I would say is completely right. Like, if you are working with a lawyer not familiar with the space, they'll redline maybe the whole thing, because anybody not in the space is going to be like, this is the craziest contract I've ever seen. This is terrible. Like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. But if you can have like a light touch and just maybe try to get at least goals, or reduce the multiple, or if you guys breach, then we can at least get out. Something is better than nothing. And
KPIs are a massive. If you can get KPIs into your distribution agreements, that's a huge factor, because it gives you that, hey, you didn't meet this metric, right? It gives you measurable goals, and they'll push back on it. Well, I can't control where the retailer is going to place you. I can't control the shelf space. I can't control X, Y, and Z. That's fine, but you can control how you're pushing it out, and compared to the 10 other THC brands you're representing.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to bring it down one level and let Mary speak to this as if you are a brand that is vetting distribution and you're brand new to the space, you're building a brand and you have to deal with the regulatory environment, but you're now entering the three-tier system. What are some hot tips, hot takes?
Meet them. That's the first hot tip. Make sure you're looking right. You're talking to the owner, talking to the owner. Don't just assume that your team can vet the distributor. Make sure you do a credit check for some of these smaller distributors. They say they want to take your brand on consignment. Don't do it. They'll say they want to do a 30-day net. Make sure you do a credit check. Make sure you know they've paid for the product they have. I know that there are a lot of large distributors that have excellent reputations, but there are a lot of mom and pops that are getting set up now and claiming they can move your product. They'll tell you that the big distributors have 20, 30, 40, 100, 300, 1,000 brands, but you're their only THC brand, or they're putting a portfolio together of THC brands. Make sure you double check, because once you send them your product, the cost of shipping it back isn't worth it. The whole approach here is to do your due diligence. Make sure that you're establishing a relationship with a distributor that is as important, because you're a startup brand, you put all your money into building your product. You want to be sure that you can trust them and that you have a real relationship. There's a friendship that's built, a partnership with your distributor. And then the key piece with distribution is education. Make sure that they're receptive to education. If they are going to sign with you, they need to understand that you're going to educate all their sales reps. You're going to show them your programming calendar for the whole year, what you expect them to do. You want to make sure you communicate that. Your programming calendar lays out all of your promotions. You want to check with them if they're going to be partners with you in scanbacks, billbacks. So when your product is unknown, they're on the shelf with 300 other brands. How does your brand stand out? You're going to have to put it on sale. And the brand absorbs that. So you get your big order from your distributor, and then the next thing you know, 30 days later, not only they pay you, but would you like us to deduct the billbacks for the last 30 days? And then you find out that you did not make what you thought you were going to make. So keeping track of all of those. We need to deduct, we need to reduce your price by $4 a 4-pack. Well, if that's your whole margin, then you're spending a lot of money on marketing, which is fine. But that's where you want to put your money, is in-store promotions with your displays, with your scanbacks. You want to make sure you capture the consumer who's in the store. I mean, a lot of people focus on marketing so that the consumer walks in asking for your product. But mostly, you want to make sure that the store is partnering with you as well. And that's an important piece.
Thank you. That was a lot.
Was that helpful? I'd love to see if that was helpful.
That was very
Okay.
helpful, Mary.
Okay, good.
Would love, yeah, let's
Okay.
hear some finance tips.
Yeah, so
Sure.
just real quick on the whole distribution thing. Before you can even get into the stores, right? What are you going to have to give up to even get to that point? A lot of this is, conversation around, equity and stuff like that. What does your cap table look like even going into that conversation? Are you overly, over leveraged? Is your cap table diluted? These are things that you have to consider, especially when you get to a point where you're Pharos and you're in 127 stores. That's a lot, but that doesn't come free, and it certainly doesn't come cheap. So, definitely make sure you're having those conversations with your CPA, your tax advisors, and also your legal team as far as your equity position and your cap tables.
Yes, excellent point. This is why we should.
Perfect. Who else is building a brand that's experiencing some friction on any of those fronts?
One idea, sorry.
Please, go
One idea on the distribution and equity part is that I've seen a lot, not only in alcohol, but now also in THC beverages, is doing sort of like a phantom equity. So instead of giving up actual equity on the cap table, you can say, well, if there's a change of control and we sell this thing because of how great a job you did, we'll just give you 10% of whatever whatever receive it in terms of the sale. So you don't actually give any equity, and it's oftentimes easier because I've gone down the road of equity, and it gets so complicated with the distributor team and all this stuff. So anyway, just one idea that I've thrown into contracts before that actually, gets them to do a little bit more effort because they see the potential upside.
Fantastic. Well, does anyone building want to talk about anything specifically in those 4 buckets? Talked about distribution, retail, marketing, and labeling, all kind of deep dives.
Do you know what a cap table is? I didn't know what a cap table was. That's actually critical information. Do you want to explain?
Well, yeah, the cap table just kind of shows who owns what within your company, and this could be from your CEOs, your founders, but also outside investors. You may have some non-equity players in your company. Some fractional CFOs. Some people will join your company and provide services and say, hey, you don't have to pay me, but I'll take a few points or something like that. You have to account for that, because the more you do that, the more your individual position becomes diluted, and you can give away so much of your company at some point you don't even really own it. I mean, there's people who've gone through that just so they can get these big box office distribution deals, and in the end, it really didn't benefit them how they thought.
Thank you. I think maybe what would be of interest is if you are building in the alt-bev space, you have to experience these fragmented regulatory environments. Every single state is going to have their specific nuances. You have to know regulations. I do want to say I think Florida is going to be the federal blueprint for the hemp beverage market success. And we're looking to build that this year with creating policy, sensible cannabis policy with our legislators. It takes a lot of education, it takes relationship building, and it's building off the backs of a lot of folks that have been advocating for access to the plant. But I want to bring it back to my panelists here. If you're building and you want to be successful and scale into multiple markets, how do you deal with the fragmented state-by-state nuances, regulations, and how do you strategically approach it as far as going wide?
Carefully.
Make sure you have an attorney.
So,
Yeah.
a couple things. For the most part, most states are very, very similar. They're just nuanced. Is there a milligram cap? Is there a dose cap on what you can and can't sell? The biggest differences that we see state by state tend to be advertising and labeling. Florida for hemp products, and right now beverages would just fall under hemp products in Florida, have a pretty extensive, if you're Florida compliant, you're probably compliant in most markets. But the bigger issue is on a regulatory front is the states that have no hemp program or nothing when it comes to beverages, whether it's hemp THC or any other alternative beverage, if it's functionals, peptides, whatever. It's the states that haven't addressed this at all, which creates even more confusion, right? Because states will sit there and say, well, it's FDA. Well, the FDA is not doing anything about it, right? Depending on how you're marketing the product and what you're saying. And the industry is not cohesive enough, like alcohol, that it's self-regulating itself, which is a problem that's been created by the fact that we have a state-by-state regime. So this is a very long-winded way of saying there is no easy answer. It's literally just getting down into the, no pun intended, the weeds and figuring out what works in what states. There are certain states, like I will tell you right now, I'm sorry if anyone's from South Carolina, I tell my clients all the time, stop shipping your products through South Carolina. Just stop. Every intermodal facility will flag your product and it's gonna get seized. Whether it's edibles, whether it's beverages, I've had more times. You have to understand the states that are just not helpful. Right now, Pennsylvania is becoming one of those states, unfortunately. Connecticut, find the states that work, find the states that don't work. build your exposure in the states that work. Like, it starts as simple as that. And honestly, finding, just like your doctor says, don't play Google Doc, don't play Google Lawyer. Like, I just, the amount of times that clients come back to me with a ChatGPT contract or information that they found off Google that says, well, I can do this in this state, and me have to go back to them and say, that's not 100% accurate, and you're doing it wrong. And now you're going to pay me to fix it.
Our first hire was a lawyer. It was the very first thing we did, was find a fabulous lawyer that became like a partner to us. We brainstormed everything with him. He researched every state in terms of compliance around our label. I brought a couple cans with me because the language that he came up with is just impeccable. And it applies to all the states that we're in. So and that took a lot of time to make sure that this was workable. He fortunately works on a retainer, and we've given him a percentage of our company. So, finding those kinds of friends and relationships, I think, are critical for the key people in your company. Your bookkeeper, your accountant, all those behind the scenes people are so essential. And I just keep beating that drum because it's so easy to forget that piece. It's really exciting. Hi, Chris. He's the OG in the room. He started the very first hemp beverage. I have goosebumps. He's the person who advised Rhino and I when we first started, Chris Fonts, High Spirits. I was surprised you can't, sorry, I just can't. I'm so happy to see you. But that's another thing. We're all singing to the choir. We've all become friends. Devin, who's starting her brand, is just completely wonderful. That's the best part that Rhino and I love. When you get older, you get isolated. You're not really hanging out with anyone new. And boy, are we hanging out with everybody new. And that is awesome. We also have to try to stay alive and stay in the business. And there's some real, there's Ted. There's another OG. But we really need to emphasize the back room. Be careful. Don't get just focused on your liquid, your marketing, your brand. Make sure you have the infrastructure in place because your investors and the people you're going to go to for money when you run out, which you will run out of money. There's no question. We are grossly undercapitalized, and we've just finished a $750,000 raise. So now we need to raise another $1 million. It's shocking how much it costs once you try to launch a market. And do not go into multiple markets at one time. Stick right in your backyard as best you can. Montana, where I live, we can't sell it there. So Florida's where we're living now. No, just kidding.
Yay.
Almost.
We can hang out, Mary.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
I'll stop talking.
one saying both in alcohol and any product really is deep, not wide, right? So you don't want to spread yourself too thin. But one thing I was just thinking might be a potential way to maybe save a little. We do a lot of work for different agencies, and we put together like 50 state surveys of what the agencies can do in terms of tastings and things like that. And so if you work with agencies, they may have some of the resources, so you don't have to necessarily pay for them yourself, even though you should verify what the answers are. But that was just a little tidbit. But to your point, deep, not wide is definitely a very important tactic.
That's a great resource. So I would say, like, looking at this, since most of you are builders, a lot of this conversation has been centered around finding the right fundamental pieces of the system so that you can continue to grow and making sure that you have all of your ducks in a row. Was there any other questions? Any final questions? Okay, let me ask you all. Is now a good time to launch a brand, or is it a dangerous time?
Personally, I would say dangerous, and whether it's alcohol, non-alcohol, THC, I would be extremely cautious in all of them. And yeah, I would say maybe a dangerous time personally.
And before you go on, if everyone in here is clearly already building a brand, so now they're scared.
No,
But
go for it. Go for it. Go
what's
for it.
what's the single biggest mistake that you could help them avoid?
I think that honestly, the co-pack issues are the biggest one that I see that cost people like time and a lot of money potentially. And I have had clients who literally couldn't even launch their brand or went out of business because their co-packer made massive mistakes with their product, and either the products were, crushing and, they couldn't sell them, or there's issues with the can liners or all of these different things. The labels were put on, really shitty and they look terrible. So I would be careful and make sure you have a reputable co-packer and spend some time on that contract in addition to the ones we talked about in distribution. But if you can't launch your product on time or at all because your co-packer sucked and you have to find a new one, then that's one of the areas I would focus.
Thanks. Is it dangerous? Is it good time?
Well, I think
How can
dangerous
we avoid
is lawyer talk, right? They try to.
We're always negative, looking at the worst possible case. So,
I would say this is a good time, a fantastic time, in my opinion. You're seeing a lot of activity that goes against what people are trying to say as far as like the hemp ban and stuff like that. We're seeing more technological advancements. We're seeing more brands. Even the gentleman brought up education. We're seeing more education, specifically with the universities. My company, we are partnering with FAMU, their medical marijuana research department. So I think if you're going to do it now. Like, I see this industry very similar to the .com boom or fintech. It's a tidal wave. It's going to come, and I would say if you're going to get in before it becomes oversaturated. You guys, I think, are in a very unique position. You become some of the first to put a lot of these products out there. And I know I spoke a lot on the back office, but make sure your product tastes good. Like, I sampled a lot out there, and boy, some of them are really good. Some I'm like, okay.
I appreciate your optimism, and I hope to create the regulatory environment that supports this kind of innovation, this entrepreneurial spirit. This is what the American dream is about, and we are building a brand new industry. It is. I just hop out of bed very excited, and I love speaking with entrepreneurs, and that's what these conferences really invigorate. And I will say, I've spent the past 3 days around builders, investors, people, dreamers, and everyone's very excited about the cannabis beverage industry. And it's definitely going to be a tough road, but if it was easy, then everyone would be doing it. And I remain optimistic. But I want to continue the question to you, Zach. Is now a good time, a dangerous, and how can people avoid what the biggest mistake? How do they do that?
So first, I'm bullish on the THC beverage market. I do think it's going to get a carve out at some point in the next 12 months. That said, I am a lawyer, and I would say this. It's dangerous. If you're starting from scratch right now on a THC bev side, it's dangerous. But to kind of kick on the AltBev theme, other bevs, it's actually super time. Like, I was telling someone today, like, watch, within the next 2 years, 5-hour energy shots of peptides will be everywhere. Like, if you're coming out with a peptide beverage, absolutely. If you're looking at the functional side or the nutraceutical side, absolutely. There's a little less regulatory downside, a little more clarity. So I think it depends on the beverage. I'm still bullish, absolutely, on the THC bev side, but it's super dangerous because I think, to Mary's point, the cost going in, you need to have a really good product and really good investment behind you. But if you're looking at other alt beverages, 100%, I think this is a game time.
Great. Let's hear it, Mary, please.
I'm not sure why I'm pausing, other than to say that, there's no question that hemp THC products have been banned effective November 13th. That is a fact. That has happened. And we are all in our industry on the Hill working with Congress to extend the ban. So you're still, no matter what, always going to be dealing with the regulatory piece and the stigma associated with cannabis. You know, we're all in this room, we're all oriented towards it, but it is still very much alive and well, the evil weed idea. So it's so easy for a legislator to feel like he needs to respond to his constituency. And if he's getting, or she is getting a lot of pressure, then that just sort of, that capricious nature of it, all of a sudden it's changed. I met with a lot of legislators, and none of them want to shut down the 28 states that are currently regulating THC beverages right now. That's massive government overreach, especially the Republican Party felt that way. Even Ted Cruz's office said, we're going to write our own bill. So, you know, this is a real concern. However, with all of that said, we are in the midst of a huge revolution. We are all game changers. This is a very big deal. And Chris is over there nodding his head as one of the first. And it's going to be a huge industry. I watched David Trone, the president and owner of Total Wine, stand up in front of a group of people at the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America, accept his Hero Award, and look out into the room and said to every distributor in there, don't hesitate, now's the time, get on board. It's a $30 billion industry that's being birthed right now. So I'm kind of saying, yes, if you want to go for it, go for it. But just make sure you have all your ducks in a row. Please don't think that because you've got 100 or 200,000 that you're putting into it, or like Rhino and I put in 500,000. We thought we got 500,000. Not even close. Okay? So just because it's inexpensive to get in. You're talking to a co-packer. Oh, I can do a few hundred barrels, no problem. You're talking to your can person. Yeah, we can do short runs, but keep it local. Make sure that your boots on the ground are you, the owner. And don't just assume that you can spread. I want to say one more thing.
Sure.
It's very tempting to go big, to go into other states because Mike, it's very tempting to go into other states because your distributor will place an order. You're going to get money in. You'll sell, if you've got 4 SKUs, you'll sell maybe 2 mixed pallets. Okay? So they may buy 2 mixed pallets. They may buy 1 pallet mixed. In our case, there's 104 cases on a pallet. So that's, you're excited about that. And then you think, well, if I go to another distributor, I'll get another 2 pallets or 3 pallets or 5 pallets. But what you're not thinking about is, what is it costing you to open in that market? How much does that cost? All the bill backs, the scan backs, the promotions, the introduction, all the boots on the ground, the team you need to hire to go to that state. So stay local, start small, and get your data points. Because if your product really starts moving off the shelf, that's going to attract your next distributor. And they're getting a lot smarter now. They're really asking for that data. They want to know, how is your product moving?
Please.
Very quickly on the regulatory front, something
Sure.
to keep in mind. When it comes to THC beverages, everyone talks about the ban. Oh, wow, the ban. There's another factor to realize. None of these have ever been approved by the FDA. Like, we're talking about, a government overreach with a federal ban. That's great. This is still a product that you ingest, which means it's covered by the Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act, which means the FDA has complete oversight over it. And the FDA has never approved THC in beverage form. They just have not done it. So it's great to get an extension on the ban, but we have no idea what the FDA is going to do at some point down the line. So this is a calculated risk. Like I tell clients all the time, you have to make a calculated risk, a decision of cost benefit, right? Is the lower barrier to entry into a market from a cost perspective, not that $500,000, $1 million is not a lot, but compared to I'm going to go manufacture edibles, right? Or something like that. is the lower barrier to entry worth it compared to the FDA tomorrow could come around and say, you're done. I know it's something we talked about, but this is kind of, if you've worked in the cannabis industry, this is a Cole memo moment, right? There could literally be a memo which has no authority, but just a policy memo saying, yep, federal government's going to take a hands-off approach towards these products, and this is why we're going to do it. The entire marijuana industry was built off of a policy memo from a deputy attorney general. So the ban is important to talk about, but it's also important to talk about there's a number of other federal agencies that have regulatory oversight that have not yet taken any position on this.
Thank you. And I think really the final point, and just going back to the title of this panel, is building and scaling in a regulated industry. It's full of excitement and opportunities. You can lean into the AltBev. You can be the first to market, but the regulations are going to come. And I truly believe that smart regulations are how we continue to grow and scale. And it takes the responsible operators and the people doing great business on either side of the market to help our legislators understand what it's going to take to do that correctly and well. So it's up to us and to keep this industry growing as fast as we can. We have to do it responsibly. Regulations create opportunity. They don't just hamstring it and take it away. So I wish you, all of you builders, the best of luck. And if you need any advice on regulations in Florida, I'm available. And sure. Yep.
The question for the camera was, what's the thought process from an operator's perspective on direct-to-consumer online sales compared to boots on the ground?
Thanks, Zach. He's great. Well, first of all, to me, online sales are all about data collection. You have direct access to your customer. You get to have regular contact. We're always in touch with the people that buy from us online, making sure that we find out what they liked, what they didn't like, how much they're ordering. Fortunately, our drink tastes incredible. So we have over 70% of the people that buy from us buy again, over and over and over again. And that data is useful. It's great to communicate to your distributor, but we have focused entirely on the 3-tier market in our growth expansion. We do not focus heavily on D2C. And in some part, because speaking of legislation, we don't know what's going to happen. If you've built your entire brand on D2C and you haven't aligned in the alcohol space, if you are an intoxicating brand, then you really are, I think there's a high risk there. So that's my 2 cents on D2C, but great way to collect data, having direct contact with your customer. The other great way is festivals, in person, getting your drinks out there to multiple people, getting their feedback on the ground. What do they think of your drink? And what kind of feedback for your can, your labeling, your marketing, your image? All of that is extremely helpful when you do festivals. And if you can get into some retail stores, I'd highly recommend that before you get on to a festival. Because the first thing they're going to say to you is, where can I buy it? So if there's a way for you to drive customers into retail locations, the manager of that retail location, and you go and say, how did we do? Or you hand out coupons to the people that are trying your drink and they take it into the retail location. All of that is data. It's so much about what you're collecting, what you're learning in the marketplace so that you can make pivots and turns and adjust as you go.